What's going on, everyone, and welcome in to this edition of b-schaeff Daily Live as we're talking here in the evening hours. What day is it? Wednesday, July 24th, 2024. Cardinals lost that series against the Pirates, but we're not really here to talk very much about that. We're going to talk about the trade deadline that's coming up 6 days from now. Really 5 days from now after this thing goes to midnight on Wednesday. It's coming up quick. Next Tuesday is going to be the deadline, 5 p.m. Central, 6 Eastern. How active are the Cardinals going to be? How active do you want to see them be? Are you of the opinion as a Cardinals fan they should buy? Do you think they should sell? You're not really sold on this year's team. Do you think that maybe standing pat is honestly the best course of action for this year's club? All of that and more we will be able to get into tonight. Your comments will drive the show. Ryan, thank you, my man, for the super chat. Or the super thanks. There it is. His first on a live stream. You guys are going to drive the content tonight because, like I said, I'm not going to get into a diatribe about a 5-0 loss to Martin Perez and the Pirates. I did one of those on the Big Show this afternoon. Go check out the KTGR Big Show podcast if you need to hear that. I didn't post it on YouTube or anything. But, yeah, they shouldn't have lost to Martin Perez when the Pirates walked 9. But we're going to talk trades for the most part. So you guys have already been hot and heavy in the comments section. The one thing I do want to mention before I jump in is on the live chat, you got to be a subscriber if you want to be able to pop into the live chat. And that's just a way to grow the channel as, we're just trying to grow this thing here to where, hey, maybe a couple of years from now, you never know. This could be one of the biggest Cardinals hangouts, Cardinals spots to be talking about Cardinals baseball. So, if that's something that can happen from this, that's great. But I just ask you, hit that sub button and your comments will be immediately shown. I'm going to be a little bit on a delay because my internet sucks, but we will get into it right away. And I got to say, man, Eric, you're too much, my brother. The super chat, appreciate you, but I'm going to read Eric off the top. Probably my biggest supporter, given that he said, hey, you want to do some MLB The Show live streams? I've got an old PS5 you can have. And they actually sent it to me. But I've got this right here. I'll show this on the stream. I bought this capture card. I'm trying to figure out how to stream the show. That's coming next. I got this off Amazon. I'm told I need one of those and sitting right next to my desk to remind me to get it done. But Eric, appreciate you. We're going to read Eric's comments and then just get right into it. He says Fetty seems okay. Eric Fetty Wop. I don't think the Wop is part of it. He's got a sub-3 ERA last I checked. It went from 2.99 to 2.98 a couple of days ago when he pitched against the Rangers, 6 1/3 innings, 2 runs. 2.98 ERA. Eric Fetty was pretty mid, be honest with you, before he went over to Korea. Came back this year after a year in Korea. And my goodness, he's been good for the White Sox. And they've got him for $7.5 million for next year. So that is the type of dude that I think the Cardinals could be interested in, honestly. Because not only do you maybe improve the rotation for the stretch run, but you also potentially, looking down the line a little bit, could set things up for 2025. So Eric he says okay on Fetty. Really want Fairbanks out of Tampa. I'm not confident they'll trade for a bat. Would be awesome if they were super aggressive, traded for like a Rosarena, somebody like that. But I'll just be realistic. It's going to be a cheap starter and a cheap reliever. Let's talk about Pete Fairbanks, man. That to me would be an absolute dream. And not just because my wife was good friends with his wife back at Mizzou Occupational Therapy School. But, and he's from St. Louis. He's actually hysterical, too. If you watch his post games, I promise you the first thing I do if the Cardinals trade for Pete Fairbanks is try to get him to come on. Because he would be a lot of fun. If he would do it, he'd be a lot of fun. But he's a damn good pitcher, too. And the Rays are in an interesting spot. I'll pull up the standings so I can make sure I know exactly where everybody is right now. I'll be very curious to see what Tampa Bay does because they've got some talent. I think they've underachieved a little bit this year. You talk about run differential. The Cardinals are in that run differential situation where they're minus 36, one of the lowest run differentials in the NL. Over in the AL, though, Tampa, they're 51-51. They're at 500. Negative 67 is their run differential. That's 31 runs worse than the Cardinals and where the Cardinals are at. But, they're in the mix. There's a lot of teams in the AL, though. The Yankees, the Red Sox, the Twins, the Royals, and even the Mariners, all ahead right now in the wild card of the Rays. So what would they look to do with their best reliever? Pete Fairbanks. 3.28 ERA this year. Not quite as many saves as 19 saves. He's still gotten a fair amount of saves. Had 25 last year. He's good, man. Averaging about a K per inning. I know they signed him to kind of buy out Arb a couple of years ago. Want to try to find the updated contract stuff. He's making less than $4 million next year. He's already on the books for that. And then there's a team option for 26 for $7 million, which I think you probably would pick up by that point. I think that's a great call, Eric. Appreciate the super chat, my man. And I like the idea of Pete Fairbanks. I think the Cardinals need, just like from where I sit, I think they need one elite right-handed reliever and maybe one elite lefty reliever. And if you've got that lefty in mind, put him in the comment section, because I honestly am not 100% sure what that might look like. I haven't really been scouring in my head those possibilities, because up until recently, it kind of felt like the Cardinals were set on lefties, honestly. But, right now, Jojo Romero's not striking anybody out. He's been okay, but when you're not striking guys out, when you're not missing bats, you become very susceptible to some of the things that can just happen to you. Baseball can happen to you, as it did the other night. Siani overruns a blooper into center field, gets by him for a double, an otherwise harmless single up the middle. Suddenly, that's very costly. So you want to be able to miss bats when you're talking about the best leverage relievers that you're going to rely upon. And the fact that it hasn't been the case for JoJo tells me Cardinals might end up needing some more help. So we'll see what they end up doing there. But let me know if you got names. I think relief pitching is going to be the top area that you could focus on if you're John Mozeliak. And I'll try to talk about why that is as we go, why maybe starter is going to be more difficult to do. I just think unless you're adding an elite starter, a guy that you know is at least starting game 2 of a wild card series for you, legitimately, who are you taking out of the rotation right now? The easiest one is Palante, but we talked yesterday. He's got the best numbers in the rotation for the last couple months, basically, since he joined it May 29th, a 3.42 ERA. So for my money, man, Palante shouldn't be going anywhere. And you might say, well, I'm tired of Lance Lynn. He gave up 10 runs the other week. Well, yeah, but he's also now been 4 of 5 starts where he's given up 1 run or fewer, if I'm not mistaken. So the reality of this rotation for the Cardinals and what makes it so difficult to upgrade is because it's kind of a bunch of the same guys right now. Whether it's Lynn, whether it's Gibby, whether it's Miles Michaelis, and I guess you could throw Palante into that, although he hasn't had the bad version as often as some of those other guys. Palante had the game against Houston where he gave up 6 runs in 3 innings. But mostly this rotation is guys that are generally going to give you quality starts or something comparable. They're going to keep you in games. But then when they don't, they're giving up 6 runs, 8 runs, 10 runs. It's like, holy smokes, what happened here? So how do you go about deciding who to replace in a rotation like that? I think that's what's difficult about it, which is why I might advocate for the Cardinals just going in on reliever, going hard for multiple really good relief pitchers. Mark says, I agree. Relief pitchers should be prioritized. You get a stud righty like a Fairbanks, and again, I don't know if they'll trade him, but I'd love to see him in St. Louis, or a stud lefty, get one of each. I think you could be in a really good spot. Appreciate Eric for that super chat. Thank you, Lucas, joining the B-Schaeff Daily Gang membership. And by the way, guys, if you're in the B-Schaeff Daily Gang or you want to join the B-Schaeff Daily Lounge tier, we do have the private chat in Discord going on all the time if you're interested in that. I hope that the link is up here on YouTube to join the membership. But if you're on the Discord side of it, just shoot me a DM on Twitter. Y'all know my Twitter, @bschaefer12. And I'll get you in anywhere you need to go. The support has been incredible. Appreciate you guys, as always. Dirt Racing Previews. He's got a list. Carlos Esteves for Joshua Baez and Drew Rom. Rom's been injured. Not sure you can really trade him for very much value. I don't happen to know Baez's numbers off the top of my head. You're digging deep, though, into the prospect tier. And then Zach Eflin for Juan Bin Cho, Bryson Motts, and Pete Hansen. So you're looking toward the back end of that top 30 prospect list. I'll pull up Zach Eflin. We'll talk about him. I think Esteves would be a nice, again, reliever, little experience, little leverage experience. Bring him in, have a little more confidence than kind of the Giovanni Gallegos tier of the Cardinal bullpen right now, right? Even that Roycroft tier. I like Roycroft. I think he's going to end up being a solid arm. But could you try to add another guy that maybe Roycroft goes to Memphis for a little bit? And when or if somebody gets hurt suddenly, instead of bringing up the next best option, well, Roycroft is back, and you feel very good about that. Zach Eflin's interesting. I think he's right in that tier of not an upgrade. Maybe add him to a really good defense because the fielding independent pitching, the FIP is 3.63, but his ERA is 4.14. So, and he only has 83 Ks and 104 innings. I think people like him because he's under team control beyond this year. But, and to be fair, and he's making a lot of money next year. Wow. $18 million on the contract for next year for Eflin. I'd say he's underachieved a little bit this year of the hopes and expectations. But some of the names that you mentioned, Juan Ben Cho, Bryson Motts, Pete Hansen, I don't know if the Rays are trading Eflin for that, but they might be willing to because of the fact that they don't want to pay him next year. If he's making $18 million, they're always looking to save a buck, so that's possible. Dirt Racing Previews also mentioned Andrew Chafin for Carlson and Connor Thomas. That seems fine. I don't know if the other side's doing that deal. Brent Rooker for Gorman and Sem Robertson. Brent Rooker's the interesting one to me the more that I end up thinking about it. And because of the fact that he is under team control for the next 3 years beyond this one, it's almost one of those where, like, I could trade a team-controlled Gorman to get it because I know I've got this guy for 3 years too. Now you're going to have to pay him through ARB. And it's not a guarantee to see a guy like Brent Rooker just be great for the next 3 years. But it's also not a guarantee with Gorman. You're seeing the home run power from Gorman, but you're also seeing the downside. He's streaky. So I don't hate the idea. If you're talking about something based around Gorman for Rooker, if it's Gorman with some pitching prospects for Rooker, I don't hate it. I don't know that it's a guaranteed good idea, but I don't hate the concept. I think at this point, anything that sounds scary or bold or spicy, as Trevor put it here in his comment, I don't think I can immediately go, yeah, nope, never doing that. I think if you're the Cardinals, you have to be willing to maybe be bold. If it's not going to be now for John Mozeliak, when's it going to be? Right? Because he's done after 2025. Can he make bold moves to improve the Cardinals in the now and into 2025? And then it's somebody else's problem. As kind of crass as that sounds, and I'm not implicating that John Mozeliak would run the business that way, would run the team that way. But if he wanted to be a little bit selfish, I couldn't blame him. If he's like, look, this will help our team this year and next year. Those are the kind of deals that I maybe would like to see him do. Hey, Brett, appreciate the super chat, my man. He said, if we go get a lefty or even a righty, who is the best player options you think the Cardinals will actually go for? And which righty and lefty do we send down? Okay, so as far as guys that get sent down, I don't like to talk about that a lot because it's hypothetical, and those guys likely are still going to be on the team, right? But I will say, with how they've used Giovanni Gallegos, it tells me they don't trust him for the leverage role. Any righty they trade for, I feel like they're going to feel better about in the leverage role than Gio. Now, rather than cut a guy, you could trade Gio. You could do with Gallegos what they did with like a Paul DeYoung last year, or even a Genesis Cabrera. Find those guys a new spot where you're clearing a 40-man roster spot to ideally bring in other guys via trade to fill that spot. And you can maybe be getting a younger player. If you trade Gallegos for a 20-year-old guy in high A, well, he's not on the 40-man, and maybe he turns into something someday. That's how they got Juan Yepez back when. Traded Matt Adams for Yepez, who was an A-ball at the time. And did he end up as a star for the Cardinals? No, but, had his shot, and then now he's really getting a shot with the Nationals and has got a great 1,000 OPS. So I wouldn't mind that sort of idea when it comes to Gio. And then on the position player side, I think it's time to free Dylan Carlson. Like, I think it's incumbent upon the Cardinals to free Dylan Carlson and send him somewhere where he gets a shot. He played today. It didn't look good. I know it didn't look good. But you guys know I'm a Dylan Carlson supporter. I think he can play well somewhere else. I think it's time, though, to kind of allow for that opportunity to come up for him. I don't know what you're getting for him. I don't know if you can package him in for something you actually want, or if it's kind of like the DeYoung trade where you're just trading him away for just mostly to move him to a new place. And frankly, clear the roster spot. But either way, I mean, those are something that I'd be thinking about for sure. And as far as lefty, you could send Libby to Memphis if you wanted him to be a starter. My preference, though, would be for Libby to get a chance to be another leveraged lefty option. If they trade for one, that obviously changes maybe what you would do there because you have to have a spot for the guy you trade for. But if they don't acquire a lefty, I would hope that they would then be able to take Liberator and say, hey, those things you do in short bursts are very good. Let's let you do those things in short bursts instead of having to worry about every, couple of weeks you might have to make a start. It's just not a good dynamic. I don't think it's fair to the player either. So, Brett, appreciate that question, though. Names that they could go after, I like Fairbanks. I saw Estevez from the Angels. There's a lot of relievers you go after. Honestly, I think John Brebbia should be a Cardinal. Find something in the White Sox. And honestly, there are other names you want from the White Sox, whether it's Fetty, whether you want to go big for Garrett Crochet. I've seen that commented a couple of times here. Like that to me would make a lot of sense as a trade with the White Sox. Dylan Carlson, I think, would make a lot of sense with the White Sox. A team that's not going anywhere can just afford, kind of like the Nationals did with Lane Thomas a couple of years ago. And now Lane Thomas is maybe a guy that could be coming back to the Cardinals. Right-handed hitting outfielder. Stranger things have happened. And he's performing well this year. So I wouldn't necessarily call that crazy. 712 OPS. He's a 105 OPS plus. Nothing insane, but he's done a nice job and can play a few different outfield spots. But that's sort of what I'm thinking of in terms of the move the Cardinals could potentially make on that front. Looking for some guys with a right-handed hitting bat, and maybe it doesn't cost you a ton. Short-term, long-term, whatever the contract situations end up being. It'd be nice to go for something bigger. The screen name here makes me laugh. Farts McCool is asking why we're obsessed with 29-year-old Brent Rooker. Well, to be clear, I don't care what his age is, because he's in his prime for the next few years. I don't think he's going to turn 31 and suddenly get old on us. So 29, that's no big deal. I'm 30. I'm not going to retire anytime soon. He's got a 948 OPS. That's why the obsession. It's pretty darn simple. He's hitting 291 with a 370 on base. He's slugging damn near 600. He's got 23 homers, 69 nice RBIs, and a 948 OPS. So there's your answer. I mean, I look, Nolan Gorman's leading the Cardinals in homers. His OPS is 701. This guy's OPSing 948. I shouldn't need to say anything more than that. That's a monumental difference. Can you count on Rooker to do that the next couple of years? I don't know. It's fair to question. If you don't trust it, that's fine. This has been a breakout year for him, but he was an all-star last year too. But that's the answer as to why Rooker. Dude hits right-handed and has some ridiculous numbers. He would instantly be the Cardinals' best hitter statistically this season if he were to come over and continue to OPS in the mid-950s, 940s, 950s. I'll check out platoon splits. Here's another reason. Dude is not susceptible to splits this year. This is unbelievable. Versus right-handed pitching, OPS of 948. Versus left-handed pitching, OPS of 948. Has shown a little bit more power against lefties, which is good because the Cardinals need that. Less average, but more power against lefties. That's fantastic. That's the reason, man. The Cardinals and their struggles against lefties have been, it's to a biblical proportion at this point. Martin Perez just carved them up while walking half the roster in this game today. Bullpen walked a few guys. They walked 9 times, didn't score. I know Chapman pitched an inning, so there's another lefty. I can't remember the other relievers today for Pittsburgh. That's why, man, the Cardinals, the reason is not very difficult to ascertain. Goldie's not having a good year. Arenado's not having a good year. Those are your two best right-handed bats that were supposed to be able to feast on lefties. When they're not doing it, your team is not going to feast on lefties because you're left-heavy as it is. Contreras has missed half the season due to injury. He's back now. But that's about all I should have to say as to why you're struggling as a team against lefties. So that's my reason. I don't think I need to say really any more than that as to why Brent Rooker. I don't care if he's 29. Is the late bloomer aspect of it a little bit concerning if you're going to give up big pieces? Maybe. But the Cardinals are 29th in MLB in OPS against lefties this year. I just looked this up. 623 OPS against left-handed pitching. That's not the way that it is supposed to be. So that's a concern, and that's why Brent Rooker. Will the Cardinals get Brent Rooker? Probably not. I mean, it's going to take a lot to get him. If I'm the A's, I'm happy to wait that out or just try to get multiple top 100 prospects. All right, Trevor wants to know, let's get spicy, Walker and McGreevy or Graceffo or Robertson and Lukenbaker for Brent Rooker. I don't know that I would do Walker for Brent Rooker. I think I would consider Gorman. And maybe that's silly. Maybe Gorman's the more proven guy at the big league level because right now Walker is OPSing 650 in Memphis, and he was 0 for 4 with 4 Ks last night. Golden sombrero last night. No down on the farm tonight because we're doing a live stream, but I'll go ahead and look up the Memphis box score to tell you what's going on there. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, Trevor. It's a fun question. Brent Rooker is interesting. I don't think I would trade Jordan Walker for him, though. The McGreevy, the Graceffo, the Sam Robertson part, the Luke and Baker part, those don't really bother me that much because, honestly, I think Luke and Baker deserves to get to go play somewhere he can play. That's another guy. It might be like a free Luke and Baker sort of thing. He's just mashing in Memphis. 26 homers at last check. Kyle Leahy took the loss tonight for the Redbirds. I'm trying to pull up that box score right now. I don't hate it, Trevor, and I don't know if it's enough, really. Here's what I want to avoid. When we talk about these trades and hypotheticals, if you're having to offer up like 5, 6 guys for one player or 2 players, it's probably indicative of your trade proposal not being realistic enough in the way of sometimes you need to just offer better players instead of more players. Quality over quantity, right? If you're looking at this list and it's like a shopping cart and you're throwing guys in the shopping cart and you're going, yeah, we won't miss him, probably not going to get you Brent Rooker, right? I'm not accusing Trevor of this, but like McGreevy, Luke and Baker, those guys are in a tier of preference. If Oakland likes them, then okay, you can throw them in there. Otherwise, are they actually moving the needle for the other team? Maybe not. Jordan Walker would obviously be the big piece there. I don't know whether other teams would view, as they call on Jordan Walker, are they going to view him trade-wise as the number 1 prospect in baseball prior to last year, like he was, or the guy OPSing 660 in AAA like he is right now today? Although he did have a 2-hit game tonight in Memphis. For Memphis. They're on the road. Not in Memphis, but for Memphis. Baker had a couple of knocks, too. Yeah, Jordan's OPSing 669. He had a couple of doubles tonight, which is good. I don't know the style of double that they were, but he did have them. By the way, McGreevy, on a day where Liberator, flamed out after a few innings, I'm not saying McGreevy would have been the option to come up and start, but today it was his turn. And look, I saw the explanation. The Cardinals' explanation on this is, we've had guys come up. Graceffo not eligible to come back up yet, so you got to consider that. You can't just say, bring up whoever's turn it is in Memphis to start. Maybe not. And I saw Katie Wu had a good explanation for what all that entailed. And she's covering the team out there in Pittsburgh. I'm not. So that's totally understand. And I'm not pushing back on her explanation. However, I think it builds on itself, is my point that I made earlier today. Matt Pauley was kind of talking about, you're really starting Liberator. And I said, I'm with Matt Pauley on this. I think it's a mistake to continue to just jerk around Liberator's role and act like there are no consequences for that. Yes, there are things that have put the Cardinals into the box. Nobody thought there would be a rainout Friday right out of the break, and then you have to make a tough decision. The problem, though, is that they've been operating this way all year, and so it doesn't feel different to them to do it now. And if there had been the level of preparation to say, hey, we knew on Saturday this was coming, maybe we push back a Graceffo. Okay, you can't do Graceffo because of the ineligibility he's been up within the last 15 days. Okay, there are other guys on the 40-man roster that are also in the Memphis rotation. You could choose one of them. Is it ideal? Maybe not. But what's the threshold where you go, it's not ideal, but it's less bad than continuing to just act like we can do whatever with Liberator. That's the thing that continues to get to me. I think Liberator could be a decent starter in the big leagues someday. I do not think it will ever happen under the circumstances that the Cardinals keep having him operate under. I don't think anybody can operate well under those circumstances. They're kind of using Liberator like you would use the guy you didn't care that much about, who's a quad A player, and you don't believe in him. So you're just like, F it, we're just going to throw this guy out there because who cares if we blow up his arm? And I think part of it is that's not the spirit of it, because I think they genuinely, as a compliment to Libby, believe he's just got a rubber arm and he can do it and it's not going to be a problem. But like the results continue to indicate that maybe nobody can operate under those circumstances where you pitch an inning, you pitch a half an inning, a couple days later you pitch, 8 days later, hey, you're starting, go. Like, well, wait a minute. How are you going to get the most out of that pitcher in that set of circumstances? So to me, you start the guy. You know what I mean? You start the guy or you relieve the guy, you figure it out. And I just kind of feel like they have made their bed with the Liberator spot and now need to commit to something. So maybe if they do get a leveraged lefty and they want to start him like they did with Palante, send him back down. Okay, so be it. But I'm just not 100% sure that's even the right call. I might prefer him in leverage. We don't really know because he's not really been given that consistent spot. And maybe the consistent spot is overrated, but I don't know. You let me know what you think. But I do push back on this idea that no, they couldn't have done anything better this time. They were handcuffed. They're hamstrung. I don't think so. My whole point, though, is 6 shutout innings tonight from McGreevy in Memphis. He's not on the 40-man, so it would have been even more complicated to do it. And honestly, he's not had a great season. 4.45 ERA in Memphis. Good to see that, though. I think McGreevy could be a bullpen piece at some point for St. Louis, but that might be the extent of it. I'm not sure he'll stick as a starter. Brett said, with less than a week to go, thanks for the super chat, by the way, I'm honestly surprised we haven't seen at least one big move other than Hunter Harvey trade. It's gonna ramp up. And to that point, Brett, and maybe part of the reason that the Cardinals have not been active and that we're kind of wondering, where do they actually stand? Is Mo throwing smoke screens, or are they really going to be not that active? Because if you read Katie's article in The Athletic, I believe this was posted earlier today, maybe late last night. It's titled, How the Cardinals and John Mozeliak Are Navigating MLB's Trade Deadline Uncertainty. That article plays it off as if the Cardinals shouldn't be expected to do anything really big. And go read it for yourself. I'm not going to give away the whole article. Katie works hard. But Mozeliak's quotes in the article are basically like, we don't really know who the sellers are going to be yet. And they're kind of still deciding themselves. And so that's why the delay. And basically, the Cardinals are willing to be patient, wait out some of these teams that have relievers to sell. And then once they realize they need to be selling those relievers, bam, the Cardinals can pounce. That's my sort of view on what they're planning to do, is wait it out and pounce for the relief pitching market when the time comes. Could you arguably set the market instead of waiting for it to be set? Sure. But if these teams and you're interacting with them and they're telling you, we don't know if we're selling yet, call us in 2 days, then what can you do? I understand that from Mo's perspective, there's not a lot he can do. But we'll see. And as far as starting pitching goes, this Cardinals team, like an Eflin or somebody in that tier, I think Fetty is above that. If you can go almost a full season now with a 2.80 ERA or a 2.98 ERA, you're probably doing something right. And your contract is very nice for next year. Eflin's making $18 million next year to pitch potentially less goodly than Eric Fetty at $7.5 million. I'm not as interested. I don't even think I am that interested in Eflin at all. Unless you're basically just getting him because you're willing to pay him and the Rays aren't. And the prospect capital won't be very much. But his 4.1 ERA, despite the better FIP, is he guaranteed to be better than Lance Lynn right now? Is he going to be better than Palante? Palante's got a better ERA than that as a starter. Each week, a different starter in this rotation has a bad week. And you're like, well, kick that guy out. He sucks. Well, that's not really... the next week, it's going to be somebody different. That's what makes it tough. And that's why I would focus on going heavy on relief pitcher. Trey, thank you for the super chat, my man. He says, let's think realistic for Mo's track record. Tommy Pham, Fetty, maybe Carlos Estevez. That would be a good deadline. My understanding is maybe the Cardinals aren't so hot to try to bring Tommy Pham back. All right, I can disagree with it, but I think, I'm just sharing that people don't seem to necessarily think they're going to do that for whatever it's worth. I think it'd be fun. I think it'd be a blast, actually. But, all right, if not Tommy Pham, like a Grichuk or like somebody in that tier, right? Right-handed hitter, can hit lefties, short-term contract, can play some center field if called upon. That's sort of the vibe, I think, for what they'd be looking for if a bat would happen. To me, a bat cannot happen unless you also move out Carlson, which won't be hard to do. I think they'll do it for basically nothing at this point. And why do I say that? Well, I've seen them not play him at all. And then when they've played him, he hasn't played that well. So I think they're going to be more than willing to do it that way. Whether that's something they should do, shouldn't do, I'm not really here to debate that. I'm just trying to project that maybe that's what we're going to probably see. As far as Estevez, yeah, Trey, I pulled him up, man. I mean, the numbers are good. 1.6 WAR on not Fangraphs, but Baseball Reference. 2.5 ERA, 19 saves. He's perfect. He's a perfect fit. Can strike some guys out, about a K per inning. He'd be great. Him or Fairbanks, I'd be all in on that for the Cardinals. What would it cost you? I don't know. That's what gets tricky. The Cardinals are going to want to do the biggest upgrade they can make at the least cost to them. That's sort of where it is to me. Ryan says, what was your take on the KD piece today? Was a little disappointed to read that it seems like the Cardinals are favoring low-hanging fruit, but certainly not surprised. It could very well be a smokescreen, is what I want to continue to reiterate. If the Cardinals were planning to make a big splash, that article would be the same. If I'm John Mozeliak, I'm giving Katie the quotes that tell me nothing, essentially, other than something that could make it look okay if we don't get anything done. Right? He's sort of buttering everybody up to say, if it doesn't happen, here's why it didn't happen. It was tough. But we have seen that. Remember the famous Matt Carpenter's our third baseman quote? Arenado was a Cardinal like 2 days later, whatever it was. It could be a smokescreen. It might not be one. I'm not saying it is one. But I'm saying if it was one, it would look the same as if it wasn't. If that makes sense. It's a little confusing. Hunter said Tanner Banks could be an option from the White Sox for cheap. Yeah, him, John Brebbia. I really like the idea of Brebbia. If you could go Carlson for Brebbia, I'd probably do that. Right? Again, not because I'm anti-Carlson, but because I can tell the Cardinals are. Right? We can be honest about it at this point. Trey feels like the fans really over-exaggerate what can be done mid-season. Not a lot of sellers. Big moves are made in the offseason. Yeah, Trey, but what's frustrating, man, is then in the offseason they say, well, we can always do it at the deadline. It's kind of this never-ending cycle where you're like, well, when do you actually do the stuff? When does the stuff come? Fair to wonder. Let's see here. YouTube kind of jerking me around on the chat a little bit, guys, so I apologize for that if I missed something. But just keep commenting. If I miss you, I'll try to get back to you. Scott G says, if a starter gets hurt, we're screwed. Look what happened today. Yeah, that's it. That's the thing. You don't need a number 5 starter in this rotation right now, but you could use a number 5.5. You could use a guy that you could stash in the bullpen until you need him. Because if they grab a starter like an Eflin or like somebody with a 4.5 ERA, I've seen people say James Paxton. Okay, 4.5 ERA. Who are you taking out? Because I don't even Lynn has been frustrating, but he went 5 scoreless yesterday. He finds a way more often than not. I'm not taking those guys out. I'm not taking Palante out. I'm not even advocating to take out Michaelis. Count his quality starts, man. He's given them a chance to win. And he's also under contract for next year, so that's another reason that they're not going to shelve him to the bullpen. So to Scott's point, you do probably need another starter, but it's almost like a just-in-case basis. How do you find that guy who's going to be willing to pitch in the bullpen, but then you also think could be fine if you needed to call upon him to join the rotation? I'm not calling that an easy needle to thread, but the Cardinals have not done a good job of it in recent years. They've got a bunch of guys in Memphis right now that they clearly don't trust. And that's tricky because ideally a starter goes down, that's somebody that you call upon. And imagine if Palante hadn't panned out as a starter. They'd be even further up the creek at this point. But they basically lucked into that because he told Ollie Marmol, yeah, can I go down and start? And he's like, yeah, I'll put in a good word for you. And now he's been their best starter the last 2 months, Gorman, Libby, Scott for Miller or Rooker. Yeah, so last night on B-Schaeff Daily, I and that's Ivan posting that comment. Last night, my unhinged proposal, and it was toward the very end of the episode, so if you didn't hear it, I'll tell it to you now, was, look, if you're talking Gorman and Graceffo for Rooker, why not add Jordan Walker and they can pick their pitching prospect? And then you bring back Mason Miller with Rooker. So it'd be Gorman, Walker, Graceffo, and their pick of pitching prospects. Whether that's Hentz, Quinn Matthews, Cooper Jerpy, whoever they think the best one is, that's who they get. They can pick. 4 for 2. And I've heard people say, well, Mason Miller's just a reliever, so I probably would pass on that, which is fine. I mean, Gorman and Walker, if they both turn things around a year from now, maybe they're both studs. And you're going, oh my gosh, can you believe he was going to trade both those guys? It could sound stupid for sure. But Rooker has a 948 OPS. He has it. Mason Miller, if he's not the best reliever in baseball, he's behind only Ryan Helsley. I mean, in that tier, Clase is another one, but just one of the very top arms. It would be nasty to have Mason Miller and Ryan Helsley to finish games. I'm just saying. So I don't know if I could just tell you, no, I wouldn't do that crazy trade I came up with last night. But as far as Ivan's here, talking Gorman, Libby, Scott, you're not going to get Miller or Rooker for that. I just don't know that Libby has a bunch of value right now. Victor Scott probably don't have any value right now. Not performing in AAA. Roberts' stuff is pretty average. He's declined in AAA. That's from Trey. Yeah, I don't think he has a lot of trade value. I know. Mr. McCool said that he would never describe Mo as bold or aggro, and I wouldn't either. Maybe toward the end of his tenure here in St. Louis, he wants to make it happen. You know, could be interesting. Zach says, could be an L take. I'd go ahead and trade off Goldie and move Burleson to first. It's not an L take, Zach. It's not. I understand you're not alone in thinking it that way. However, Cardinals aren't doing that. They are going to ride it out with Goldie, in my opinion. Unless, I mean, if it got so bad where he was like, look, just get me out of here. I'm sorry. I feel bad that I'm performing so poorly. But lower him in the lineup and he walks and maybe goes back to Arizona or goes somewhere else next offseason to kind of try to refine himself. I just don't think they're going to trade Goldie. And I'm not going to advocate for them to either because I think it's more than just the stats on that one. And then we get some of the silly ones. Goldie for Crochet, who says no. I think Joe was kidding. Crochet would be great, man. I think the Cardinals should trade with the White Sox, and then it's just how much are they willing to give up to get? Because Crochet would be the elite get. I do like Luis Robert. I don't fear, Luis Robert not being good. I think he would be good. You're going to pay a lot for him. I understand that as well. Dylan says, Cards fans be like, unload the dead weight, holding the team back for some upgrades. Yeah, exactly. You're not going to be able to trade the players you don't want anymore for guys that you do want. Other teams are going to say, I've got 10 teams on the line. I don't need to take your scraps. Right? So, got to be realistic with these. Does the front office have disdain toward Pham? That was from Trey. He'd be a great pickup as a lefty master. I don't know if disdain is the right word, Trey, but I don't see the reunion if you pick up what I'm putting down. Cardinal fan says Hector Neris for Roby if the Cubs would trade with us. They probably wouldn't. But it'd be interesting if they would. Jen, what's going on? Glad to see you. She said, I would totally pay a higher tier of membership if you had one that would kill the ads. Jen, I wish I could do that on YouTube, but they don't let me. They do on Spotify, though. Only a couple of people have ever done it on Spotify, but if anyone really wants to listen to the podcast daily with no ads, I can get you that for like $5 a month on Spotify. It's just not an option on YouTube. If it was, I would offer it. Right? Now, Jen, what I would say, I believe YouTube Premium is a thing that exists. If you just get a YouTube Premium account, I think the ads go away and the creators still get a little bit of money from your views. And that might only be like $8 or $9 a month. But I don't know for sure. I think that's a thing, though. I've heard about that because when I get, just full disclosure, when I get a little bit of money from each podcast, I'm able to look and see where it came from. It's like, okay, you got a few bucks here from people watching your ads, which I don't put the ads out. That YouTube does that. I don't have anything to do with it. They just put them in there, and they even pick the spots. It's all automated. So if you ever get an ad, you're like, why is Brenden advertising this? Unless I read it in my voice, they're not a sponsor on that level, right? Hastings Layers Premium Eggs, Mark's my sponsor. That's real. That's legit. But if it's just a video, like I don't get to control that. However, it'll tell me you made this much amount from YouTube Premium. So I think that is a thing, Jen. But I appreciate your super. Really do. Cardinal fan, as far as Roby goes, I haven't seen lately. He's been injured this year. I really liked him when the Cardinals traded for him. Has not been able to stay healthy. Has been kind of the issue there. He has not thrown much in recent weeks. So I don't know how much value he would have. Mark asked if Gorman is the strikeout leader. Probably. It wouldn't shock me. Biggest upgrade is benching Goldie. I get it. I don't think they're going to do that. I understand the frustration. Jake says 15 years ago it was Matt Holliday. Now it's Luis Robert. He'd be great. Joe adds Kevin Pillar to the conversation. Yeah, I don't really know what his numbers have been this year. I also saw that Kevin Kiermaier is going to retire after this year. He has not been performing offensively as much, but I always kind of saw the two Kevins, Pillar and Kiermaier, as similar because they play good outfield defense. I did unplug and plug it back in. I don't know if that's going to make any difference. I can start pressing buttons. I don't know if that'll make any difference either. I'll really start pressing buttons now. I'll start doing all kinds of stuff. I don't think I will be able to midstream change the inputs. This is probably as bad as we've ever had it simply because it's going on and people are aware of it happening as we're going. Oh, is it better? I don't know how that happened. All right. I'm not changing shit now. Oops, sorry. Didn't mean to cuss. Yep, I'll have to fiddle with it a little bit later. I'm definitely not moving another muscle the rest of the time either. I did press a button. The question is that the button that fixed it, or is it the fact that I unplugged the mic and plugged it back in? Everybody says it's back to normal. My God, I am so sorry. This is all going to have to be deleted on the repost of the podcast. This is hysterical. Nobody wants anything to do with this. Okay, I'm going to be back. Let's scroll back up. That was embarrassing. I'm really sorry, guys. Aaron says time to trade Gorman and Walker and Carlson in the same trade was for Soto. That was the time. Maybe he would have changed the wild card series against Philly. We still have him now. Yeah. Looking back, if you could change anything, you'd probably change that. But I also don't know that we don't know what it would have been. But if the Cardinals would have thrown names like Gorman, Walker, and Carlson on the table at the time, I think that probably would have gotten it done, even without the pitchers that were involved in that deal. Remember, though, you guys got to stop giving me money to sound like garbage. The fact that you all are paying like a super chat for this makes me feel a little embarrassed, but I appreciate you guys. The thing of it is, you look at that trade for the Nationals, what they got for Soto. Oh, my gosh. A bunch of studs. Abrams is a stud. Maybe not a stud Mackenzie Gore, but, he was a better prospect pitching-wise than the Cardinals had at the time. Like, they got some good players in that deal. I'm just saying. All right, I know there's got to be some more trade ideas. Who do you want me to talk about? That whole audio jack thing messed up the entire stream of reading through the comments. Throw me a name. Throw me a cool idea. Do you want to see him get a starter, or are you thinking more along the lines of reliever like I am? If I had to rank it, Fairbanks would be near the top. Brebbia for the cost would be near the top because I think they could get him for cheaper. I think that would be a good one. Cardinal fan mentions Yimi Garcia. I'll take a look at him. Blue Jays reliever, right-handed reliever, good numbers. I like this guy. 40 strikeouts in 29 innings. That's pretty good. 2.5 ERA. Let's check out the contract because that's going to be part of it too. These are the types of moves, though, that if Mo makes one, you go, wait a minute, Yimi Garcia, he's pretty good, right? And then you say, he's a free agent after the year. He's perfect as a rental. What do I think it would take to get Fairbanks? Nick wants to know. Yeah, we looked up Fairbanks' contract a little earlier. He's real cheap next year. He signed that deal. Fairbanks, when he was even at Mizzou back in the day, he had some injuries, and then he was with the Rangers in their minors, and he was kind of fiddling around as a starter, not going to make it, it seemed like. So many injuries. But then when they shifted him to relief, it was, and I don't know if the Rangers can take credit for that or if the Rays after they traded for him, but it clicked, man, and that slider is wipeout. But he's making like $4 million at most next year based on incentives. $3.5 million, basically, 3.6. And then it's $7 million option for the following year. So 2.5 years of him, I think would be pretty good. I would be into it. What would it cost him? Probably pitching prospects, but with the Rays, it's always hard to tell because they might want somebody. Like, look, the Arozarena trade obviously happened with the Rays. Is there a guy that you could see the Cardinals coveting, but the Rays are like, yeah, we don't really want him? Yeah, you could see that. The Rays would just kind of get to pick. And that's scary because the Rays have been historically pretty smart. But now the Cardinals have one of the Rays guys, former Rays guys, in Hein Bloom. So maybe he can kind of balance that out. I did not already discuss a Fetty Pham deal. What I basically said is, like the idea of Fetty, I think he helps for 2025. I don't think he's an ace, but I think he's a nice, solid arm, and he's cheap next year contract-wise. I don't think the Cardinals will trade for Pham, is my official stance at this point. I think they are not in the Tommy Pham business. Ryan wants to know about Eovaldi, and I think that's a good name. And that one I like because we've seen the Cardinals and Rangers trade, right? Last year, the Cardinals traded Rangers players that could help them win, and now maybe you could see the other side of it. And Eovaldi is a dog. Like, he's one of those guys that every time you see him in the playoffs or whatever, you're like, this guy's pretty good, but you don't really think about him a lot outside of that. He was another one of those kind of like, is he a starter? Is he going to be able to have a workload? He's always kind of getting hurt, this and that. Excuse me. I like Eovaldi. And I think you could get him somewhat affordably. I want to see his contract, though. What's he got? Next year is a vesting option for $20 million. It vests with 300 innings pitched between this year and last year. So let's see if he's going to vest. I think probably so. Oh, maybe not. No, maybe not. He was at 144 last year, and he'd have to get to 156 this year. He's at 99. So it might vest, but $20 million I think would be kind of par for the course for what you're getting from Eovaldi. And I think I like him as a Game 2 in the playoffs. That's a guy that I don't have to question. Game 2 playoffs, yes, I'm into Eovaldi. I like him. What would he cost you? Again, I think we're talking about always, if teams are giving up pitching, I would think they would want to get pitching back. So is that going to be the Graceffo tier, the McGreevy tier, or is it going to be more like the Jerpy tier, the Quinn Matthews range, the Tink Hence department? Like, how far up the ladder are you willing to go? Are there trades that can be made using guys like Zach Thompson where you maybe don't have an obvious fit for him at the big leagues anymore in your org? Is that something they could do? Every starter, I'm kind of wondering, like, what do they want? Okay, teams might want your young position players. Are you trading a Gorman to get a starter? Probably not a rental, but would you like Tarek Skubal? I put him in the picture here because he's one of the biggest names that could be moving at the deadline. Cardinals aren't going to get him, right? He's having an unbelievable year. That's what's tough about this is, like, how much are you going to give up? The stuff that you don't have is pitching. You need better pitching, but teams are maybe going to want young pitching for their pitching, and yours might not be that appealing to them. Hunter, great call on Tanner Scott. And what's interesting now about trying to trade for or trade with the Marlins is, like, Skip Schumacher might not be their manager much longer anyway. So, you know, do you almost not have to worry anymore about the disadvantage of trading with the Marlins and Schumacher giving them all the intel on all your players? Because he might tell that front office, you know, forget you guys. I don't need to tell you anything. I don't need to help y'all, because I think he's on the way out there in Miami. Like, and it's almost mutual. I think he's going to be a manager somewhere else next year, and he's going to be great. Like, somewhere that he actually should want to be, instead of with, you know, Miami, who doesn't seem to want him. But I like Tanner Scott. I asked you guys for a lefty, and you found me a lefty. Tanner Scott's been incredible this year. Probably going to be a little pricey to get, but don't you just want to see Mo have that kind of deadline? Looking at Tanner Scott, he's a free agent to be, but that's okay. It probably cheaper for that reason, right? Go get Yimi Garcia and Tanner Scott. What a deadline. I'm okay with that. If you end up with a deadline that is only relievers and maybe reorganizing your bench a little bit, more minor moves there without getting a starter, even though I agree with the comments that say if you don't get a starter and one gets hurt, you could be up the creek without the paddle, so to speak. But how fun would it be to see a bullpen that was like working backwards from Helsley? You go Helsley, and then you've got eighth inning guys like Tanner Scott and maybe Kittredge, and Yimi Garcia's in the mix, and JoJo's in the mix now, more like the seventh inning, right? And guys get pushed back into roles that's a little bit more palatable. Be fascinating. Allison, I don't think anybody mentioned Chad Green, but he's another one that's interesting. Now, as far as whether he's going to be available, let's kind of see his situation. has been darn good with the Blue Jays this year. And I'd have to think that anybody that's a reliever for the Blue Jays, if they're not contending, they probably should be willing to move those guys because you can get some premium pieces. But are you trading a prospect like Graceffo, who could be a future starter? We don't know. But are you trading that for a short-term rental reliever that could really help you this year? Joseph says Zach Thompson for Kopech. Yeah, Kopech doesn't have great numbers. Maybe the White Sox are like, sure. I think we're on the right track, guys, with a lot of these. I really do. Kevin says the best starter we can get, that's what I want. Not worried about who we give up as prospects. I want the pen upgrade as well. I think starter is tougher to do, even though everything we're hearing right now is that the Cardinals are in on all these starters, right? And any of the Bob Nightingales of the world that are throwing rumors and reports out there, that's what is being said. But I don't know. When that deal happens, and if it's for a really legitimate, good number 2 starter, Cardinals fans are going to love it, I think. I just don't know if it's a deal that actually gets done in our reality on this current timeline. Isaac Paredes, Trevor, I don't know if he's going to be traded. But I like to think about some of these guys. Yeah, if I'm the Rays, man, I'm probably holding on to him. But it says there are teams interested in Paredes. Good numbers. Young player. He's probably got a ton of team control left. Free agent after 27, so 3 more years. Yeah, dude, he'd be awesome. Positionally, I don't care where any of these guys play. Are they right-handed bats that can hit left-handed pitching? Great. And the more flexibility you have, the better. But all these guys are going to come with a cost. Joseph lists some names. Hence, Graceffo, Gorman, Sajaci, and Liberator for Crochet, Robert, and Kopech. You got to pay a lot more than that. You're sending Walker, and they still may not do that, in my opinion. But I like Crochet, Robert. I like Rooker, Mason Miller. I like these pie-in-the-sky ideas. I would like a Isaac Paredes, Pete Fairbanks combo from the Rays. John says to throw Leotis Taveras in the Evaldi deal. Heck yeah, now y'all are thinking. Allison says, I saw Scherzer thrown out there on Twitter. Is it possible? He said he wasn't going to waive his no trade, right? That was the last I think we heard from him. But that was the idea being that, well, the Rangers, my team that I'm on, and if I say bad stuff about my team, that's kind of makes me look like a bad teammate. We're going to win. We're going to contend. So I'm not waiving the no trade, is basically what he said on a podcast a couple of weeks ago. Now, if you look at it, the standings are such that the Rangers are behind a lot of teams. They're 2 games under 500. Granted, they've won 4 in a row. They're hot again. But they're behind, and look, only 3 of these teams that I name are going to make the playoffs. They're behind the Mariners, the Royals, the Twins, the Red Sox, the Yankees, and the Rays. That's like 7 teams I named. So if you're the Rangers, I get it. You're 3 out of your division. They probably won't sell, but rental of Max Scherzer, it'd be interesting. But I'm going to say they don't end up selling because they're too close in the division as well. That division's been down this year. All right, we are over an hour, but I said I would do an hour, and then I basically for 10 minutes had audio issues. So I will keep looking. I will try to power through if we have anything else. John comes up with this one. Luis Renifo and Carlos Estevez for Gorman. I probably don't water down Gorman to a lesser offensive player and a reliever. That might be where I draw the line, but I get it. Justin says Taylor Rogers out there from San Francisco. Another good, he's a lefty, isn't he? Yeah, I would be on board with that. There are lefties out there to potentially be had. I just don't know how many of them are getting traded. Tanner Scott would be unbelievable. And I don't know if the Marlins have anybody else you're interested in that would make sense, but Tanner Scott, man, the more I think about that is a great idea. You guys have been great, man. You guys have stuck with me for having the staticky, most obnoxious circumstances. If there's a trade that I did not address in your comments tonight, I am at b-schaefer12 on Twitter. Shoot me a DM, and I will make sure to talk about your trade if you DM me tonight before the deadline. But I just wanted to get that out there in case I missed some people tonight. John wants to know about Jose Siri. Need upgrade against lefties in center field. Jose Siri's kind of fun. Remember when Yachty dared him to go in spring training, and then he threw him out after that whole, he had like a kind of like a Matumbo, no, you don't throw me out, and then he said, go ahead. I'm not worried about you, go ahead. And then he went. But Siri's kind of cocky like that, which I actually kind of like. I like guys who are cocky and can back it up. Siri mostly doesn't back it up, but last year he had good numbers. This year he's got 14 homers still. He's only hitting 204, decent amount of strikeouts. I feel like Cardinals fans would not take well to a guy that plays with flair but doesn't have the numbers all the time to back that up. But I kind of like Jose Siri. I think he'd be kind of fun. Trading with the Rays wouldn't scare me if I'm the Cardinals. I get the past that's happened, but I almost would want to see a multiplayer trade with the Rays because they've got some interesting pieces. John, I don't hate that. John's come up with a lot of good ideas tonight. Mark asked about Blake Snell. I don't really think that's likely. If they wanted him, I think they would have taken him in the offseason. Someone else asked about Kikuchi. I'm not so sure on that. I think that's another one of those guys that I'm like, well, who does he replace in your rotation? Is that extremely compelling to me? Not really. Adam says, man, crochet. Walker and one of the starters. Could that get it done? Or two of them? Or blockbuster with Fetty and Crochet? No, I don't think Walker and, say, Hentz is even enough for Crochet. I could be wrong about that. But Walker is going to be a polarizing figure in trade talks. I don't think he gets moved. I'd put the percentages like 2%, maybe less, that he actually gets moved. But I think part of that is like, well, what are teams going to see him as versus what the Cardinals remember him as, and is he the same still? I'm going to say yes. Don't bail on a 22-year-old former top prospect just because of a bad year. I'm not going to bail on Jordan Walker like that. If you're getting Jordan Walker from me, it's because you're paying a ton. I'm getting a stud or two involved in that deal. Allison says Crooks and McGreevy to the Blue Jays for Garcia and Turner. I don't mind that. I don't mind that at all. I think probably they want more, though. I like Jimmy Crooks. McGreevy, I don't think has a ton of trade value. I think they'll get more for Yimi Garcia than that. Trevor is asking about Tanner Scott plus Jazz Chisholm. Yeah, man. I don't mind that thought. Jazz Chisholm kind of feels like more bark than bite sometimes. Remember that poll that came out? Other MLB players said he was the most overrated. I don't think people like that he got the cover of the show last year when he has, had one good season and then he's been kind of league average other than that. But he's a fun player. And he's still pretty young as well. But the contract is up soon-ish. And he's got 2 more years. Yeah, I would be in for that, Trevor. It would cost a fair bit, though. They don't have to unload Tanner Scott for nothing. And Jazz Chisholm's kind of like a franchise player. But if they're moving in a new direction, I can see that. I would pay a decent amount for that, though. But I think I prefer Luis Robert to Jazz, and I think I prefer Brent Rooker to Jazz, even with the defensive differences. Jeff brings up the Orioles. We haven't seen much regarding them in here. Jerpy and Chase Davis for Ryan Mountcastle. Kind of interesting. I like Mountcastle historically. But I don't know if he's exactly going to be. I want to see his numbers. He's kind of like a Gorman guy, or not Gorman, but a Burleson guy defensively. Plays a little outfield, a little first base. And his contract, he's around for a few more years through 26. Yeah, I actually like Mountcastle. I don't know if the Orioles are looking to get rid of him. I know they've got a bunch of infield prospects. I don't know offhand what Mountcastle's been playing more of this year. Looks like he's mostly been just first base now, not playing outfield anymore. So do they have an answer at first? I know they've got guys like Kobe Mayo as a third baseman in the minors. Jackson Holliday, obviously a shortstop. I don't know how many answers they have at first base if they were to trade Mountcastle. But if he's being discussed, I mean, it says they're willing to list it on him and Mullins, so it would seem to me that Mountcastle gets traded to the Astros. Wouldn't that make the most sense? They need a first baseman. It's a shame, if you're talking about all this Goldschmidt stuff, like Goldschmidt to the Astros would make sense, right? Any good first baseman would make sense there. They could get Vladdy, though, too. Jesse, we need to cook, says DFA Goldie, go get Vladdy. Again, just like with the big deals for Rooker and other names we're talking about, if you're talking about Vladdy, You're talking Walker, Gorman, top pitching prospect or two. You're selling the farm for Vlad Guerrero Jr. I'm not saying it wouldn't be worth it. Probably would be. But I don't think he ends up getting moved. And if he does, and they're that willing to move him, there's probably other teams with better farm systems trying to do the same thing. Makes it tough for the Cardinals. Would I trade Gorman? This is from Czar Alexander. For a right-handed hitting outfielder and then put Donovan at second base full time. Yeah, I would if the outfielder was good enough, but I got to know he's good. And I think I trust Rooker. Maybe I shouldn't, but I think I do. And Ryan adding that Ken Rosenthal reported that the Jays probably not moving Vladdy. Yeah, that's what I said. I would be shocked to see if they would. Frankie Montas from Michael McGreevy. CJ wants to know, I don't think the Reds are trading within the division. That's always kind of my base assumption on those sort of things, but I don't think it's unfair value-wise. Remember a couple of years ago, everybody wanted to trade, they wanted Montas, and they were going to trade Nootbaar to get him. And now it's like, well, Nootbaar hasn't really lived up to the hype either, you know? Eric said, no way the Orioles do that, but I'd be down for it. I think that was maybe referencing the Mountcastle deal. Yeah, and I like Jerpy too, but you can't necessarily be looking at your top 3-4 prospects pitching-wise and go, oh, can't trade him. It's like, well, to do something, you might have to trade one of these guys. That's why you hopefully continue to draft and develop. Eric, you can stop super chatting me, you generous SOB. He said, oh, I forgot. Supposedly, John Heyman said the Cardinals were close to trading for Mullins, which I 100% do not believe. Yeah, I saw that earlier today, too. Some people brought that to my attention. Excuse me. I am going dry mouth. That's why I'm kind of coughing a lot. Look, Heyman is connected, but the way I view it is like, all right, there's probably agents feeding him some info, and usually with a purpose for that. I don't really know where the Cardinals almost traded for Mullins would play into that. I don't doubt it unless somebody's just screwing with him and leaking the info to see if he'd share it. But it kind of seems weird to me, right? Left-handed bat not performing this year, it honestly makes almost next to no sense. Maybe it's possible somebody was effing with him and just put it out there to see if he would share it. I don't know. I don't think that Mullins thing is real either, if I had to guess. But I don't happen to know why John Heyman, shared it. And I also didn't hear the context either. I think it was on a podcast, or radio show, whatever. But yeah. I mean, John Heyman's got a lot of followers. There's no doubt about that. I used to be one of them. Kevin, thank you, my man, for the super. Appreciate you, brother. We've had a lot of fun tonight. I am going to edit this, too. Oh, shit. I mean, shoot. Kevin, I might have just clicked a button. No, shoot, I did. I deleted his thing. Wow, that is ridiculous. It wasn't a message. It was just a super. I'd probably lose the money for it, too. Kevin, I was literally clicking to try to like your comment, and I clicked delete. I'm going to take a screenshot and send that to Kevin. Kevin, if you're on Twitter, send me a DM on Twitter. I want to show you. It's super funny. I might even tweet it out. Like, it looks so bad. It says, Kevin W. has given you, I won't say his last name if he doesn't want me to, has, done a super chat for you. And then it says, message deleted by Brenden Schaeffer, St. Louis Cardinals writer. I fat thumbed it, Kevin. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. Jacob thinks maybe Carlson for Soto. Yeah, I think they would do that deal. I think the Yankees would do that. That's a good one. I like that. Yeah, just put it on the board. Yeah, Alexander says I love McMahon, but the Cardinals don't need more lefty batters. They don't. Yeah, I don't think that's in the cards. But I get the question, Trevor. It's a fair question, my man. He's got good numbers. A lot of these names, I'm like, oh yeah, that'd be good. I wonder how many of these guys are actually going to get traded when it's all said and done. McMahon's got really good numbers this year. Versatile defender, too. He kind of replaced Arenado over there in Colorado. Other teams are going to see Walker as a stud that the Cardinals screwed up and can fix. I don't think we should move him unless we get a starter with team control. Yeah, I agree with that. They're not going to move Jordan Walker. Like, they're just not. It's fun to talk about, but I don't think they're going to do it. Joseph says that Ty France has been DFA'd. He's a righty bat. I would love to see the Cardinals sign Ty France if he's still out there. I think he has not been picked up yet. He's mostly only played first base, though, this year, So what I view about him is the flexibility defensively from his past. But I want to double check that. Yeah, he's basically been a primary first baseman only the last couple of years. Which is weird because he's not even 30 yet. But anyway, he was only his OPS is better than the majority of the Cardinals bench. So I don't think it's crazy. All right, guys, give me 1 second. I am going to wrap this thing up soon, but I need to cough. That was brutal, guys. I felt like I had a hairball. Man, I'm so gross on these streams. I got to cut it out. McMahon would destroy in Yankee Stadium with the short porch. Yeah, true that. Everybody keeps talking about Rich Hill. No, I don't think he's signing with the Cardinals. Mark Canha of Detroit has been talked about a little bit. I'm not sure necessarily they're going to... Kevin, you didn't have to give me another chat. Kevin. I feel so bad. You guys have been awesome tonight. For real. I'm going to tweet that out from Kevin just to kind of make myself look silly. I'm going to tweet out, I deleted Kevin's message. It was so mean. It was so mean of me. I fat-thumbed it, Kevin. Steven says Dodger discard Paxton. I talked a little bit earlier about Paxton. The reason I would say no to that is because unless you can say, hey, you good with pitching in the bullpen? Like, I don't think the Dodgers probably get rid of him if not for, like, almost to do him a favor. You know, like get him onto a contender. They're like, you're not going to be in our rotation anyway after we add some guys at the deadline. So we're just going to do you this favor to, you know. It said they were frustrated with his mechanics. I'm trying to figure out what happened with him when they DFA'd him. Let's see. So I don't guess they've traded him yet. Yeah, this just happened a couple of days ago. If they would put him in the bullpen, I would be for it, but I wouldn't bring in Paxton to start right away because I don't think he's better than the 5 they have. And Trevor said I was kidding about Rich Hill. Well, good. Yeah, he's kind of old. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know about James Paxton. I think he's kind of in that tier where maybe you just leave well enough alone for me. Jose Siriano is another good name. Walker for Robert and Fetty. It would take more than that, Jesse. It would take more than that, than just Walker to get those guys, I think. We got to wonder, how does the league view Walker? We know how we view him in St. Louis. How do the rest of them view him? And will that determine whether or not something gets done at some point? Jimmy Crooks raking in Springfield. Does it change the outlook on Herrera? I think what changes the outlook on Herrera is actually Pages. And the fact that the Cardinals can look at it and go, we got to back up. And if Herrera can't throw guys out stealing, then maybe it ends up being that they feel comfortable enough to move forward. If another team thinks Herrera can be an elite catcher, because the bat obviously is good, and if he can do the position defensively at the big league level, then maybe, just maybe, he's actually got some legit trade value. And Jimmy Crooks then allows you to backfill at Memphis if you do trade Herrera. So I could see them moving Herrera in the right deal. But they're not going to do it to just get rid of him. They like him. But it takes good talent to get good talent. Did not see... It was Raposo tonight in Memphis behind the plate. I keep checking because I want to see, are people stealing off of Herrera still in Memphis? And yesterday, they were 3 for 3 stealing against him. So that's the thing he's got to work on for sure. Mark Canha has been mashing lefties this year. That's from Lucas, our new channel member tonight. Appreciate you, man, for joining. I really do. Mark Canha, older than I thought, 35 years old. He's only got a 701 OPS on the year. His homers, not too many of them, just 7. Let me check. I'm not impressed so far, but maybe the splits will tell another tale. Because he would be, if you traded for him, probably not that expensive, guy off the bench to be able to come in and you left. Yep, you nailed it, man. Mark Canha is perfect. Anybody who said Mark Canha on the stream tonight is right, because he's got an 892 OPS against lefties. That's what they need. An older player who doesn't have a big contract. He's a free agent after this year and mashes lefties. because then you could actually platoon. I don't know where are you taking Goldie out of the lineup at points? I don't really know how you figure that out, but I like it. I think you're on the right track there, Lucas, with Kana. And other people mentioned him as well. So I think that's actually pretty good. There were so many good comments tonight. There were so many. The White Sox are down 27 to. Oh, you said 27-77 is their record. I thought they were currently trailing 27-7, like it was a football score or something. CJ says Jordan Walker could be another MVP JD Martinez-like hitter. Keep him. Maybe, man. I'm not trading him for just nothing. I'm with you on that. Yes, Steven, Randall Grichuk for sure is another good name, but the D-backs beat the Royals today. They're right around 500. So many NL teams don't know yet if they're sellers, and that's part of it. That's what John Mozeliak told Katie Wu in the article she put out today. A lot of teams aren't ready to grapple with selling, and I think the Cardinals are mostly focused on the reliever market, but even there's a lot of teams who might be going, I don't know. Are we doing it? What are we doing? Are we buying? Are we selling? Are we chilling? I think that's part of it as well. I really do. Ryan says, I don't remember stolen bases being a discussion with Herrera when he was coming up. Did I miss that whole thing, or was he exposed in MLB and now everybody knows? I think maybe the latter. What was discussed at the time was that he was not a good all-around defensive catcher. When it was 2022, Yachty's last year, the year that Austin Romine had to come up at one point, because I think Yachty was injured or whatever it was, they needed some reliability, and they gave Herrera a shot. It did not go well. The offense was rough, but it was more about the other stuff that did not work out at the time. He was not ready to be a catcher at the big league level. He learned a lot about what that entails, what that involves. And I think that experience kind of scared the Cardinals out of thinking he could be the next man up. And so they went out and signed Wilson, which I think is going to end up being a good signing as a result. But I think the stolen bases stuff specifically has now been exposed. But in fairness to Herrera, he did make a lot of strides in other areas behind the plate. Game calling, preparation, all those things, framing. But, yeah, man, when you go 3 for 44 against base stealers, that's tough. And so that has to be something he gets better at, I think, before they'll put him back out there. Comments have been great. I am going to bow out here at 11:30 p.m. I appreciate you guys so very much. If I missed your comment, yell at me at b-schaefer12. DM me, tweet at me, say, what the heck, I asked about, Goo Goo McGee, and you didn't tell me whether the Cardinals should trade for him. I didn't mean to miss you. I was dealing with a lot tonight with my tech issues. I'm the least tech-savvy YouTuber you're ever going to meet. But thank you guys so much. I'll try to get to all your comments the next time. We're going to wrap things up here, though. I appreciate you guys as always. We'll talk to you next time on B-Schaeff Daily Live. Peace! Thanks, everybody.